Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe and leave a like. It means everything to us. Please share this video with someone you care about and switch on post notifications so you won't miss any future videos. Thank you for always supporting. Now relax and let's begin. Georgina met James when life was still raw and honest. Their room was small, the ceiling fan complained, and the future felt like a prayer they kept repeating. She sold perfumes and hair products online. He chased interviews in a suit that didn't quite fit. Some nights they ate plain noodles and laughed like it was a feast. One day, Gina, James would say, squeezing her fingers, "I'll make you proud." Georgina would smile, eyes wet, and reply softly, "We'll make each other proud." James loved how Georgina carried hardship with dignity. She never raised her voice, never insulted him when things went wrong. She would fold his shirts, iron hope into every crease, and whisper prayers while he slept. On the day he finally got his first solid job offer, he lifted her off the floor and spun her around. "You are my good luck," he said, breathless. Georgina laughed, then pressed her forehead to his. "No," she corrected gently. "I'm your partner. Don't ever forget that." Success didn't change James overnight. It arrived like a slow fever first. A new wristwatch, then new friends, then new ways of speaking. At his office dinner, Georgina laughed at a joke, and James quickly touched her elbow, a warning disguised as affection. "Not like that," he whispered. "They'll think you're too local." Georgina blinked, surprised, like someone had called her by the wrong name. She swallowed her smile and nodded, even though her throat began to sting with shame. On the ride home, James talked about image and branding, as if love had become a product. "These people are classy," he said. "You have to blend in." Georgina stared out the window, the streetlight sliding over her face like quiet tears. "So I should become someone else?" she asked, voice careful. James sighed, impatient. "You're taking it personal." Georgina didn't argue. She only held her hands together, feeling the first crack form where trust used to live. Georgina's small habits became her comfort, neatly labeled files, rent receipts, salary slips, family papers, and letters from her late father. She kept them like a private archive of survival. One evening, James saw her arranging documents on the table and laughed. "Are you a lawyer now?" he teased, grabbing a folder. "What's this one? Future Riches." Georgina chuckled lightly, but she took the folder back with a gentleness that felt like warning. "It's just organization," she said. "Life can turn fast." James rolled his eyes. "You worry too much. Enjoy life," he said, already distracted by a buzzing phone. Georgina watched him reply to messages with quick thumbs and a secret smile. Something in her chest tightened. Still, she returned to her folders, smoothing each paper with care. It wasn't paranoia, it was a lesson. Her father used to say, "Keep what proves your truth." Georgina didn't fully understand it back then. But tonight, with James becoming someone unfamiliar, she began to understand. The memory came back on a quiet afternoon, the hospital smell, the thin blanket on her father's legs, the way his voice weakened, but his eyes stayed strong. Kingsley held Georgina's hand like he was transferring courage into her skin. "Gina," he whispered, "men will clap for you when you're useful, but when you become powerful, they will fear you." She tried to smile through her tears. "Daddy, please don't talk like that." He shook his head slowly. "Listen, keep your papers, keep your name, keep your proof." Back then, Georgina thought it was just an old man's warning, shaped by the harshness of his own life. Now, years later, she could hear the weight behind it. Kingsley had been respected quietly, feared quietly, never loud, never flashy, but always prepared. "Even if you love someone," he added, voice cracking, "don't hand your entire life to them. Love should not erase you." Georgina had promised him she would remember. She didn't know she would need that promise inside her marriage. Georgina began building the way she had always survived silently. She watched videos about business structures, read about contracts, and learned how wealth could hide in plain sight. She started small, a modest investment here, a careful purchase there, always documented, always clean. James didn't notice. To him, Georgina was still the quiet woman who cooked, prayed, and waited. When she asked him a question about the company term he mentioned, he laughed. "Why are you stressing your head? Just relax," he said. But Georgina couldn't relax. Not when her heart kept sensing danger. She wasn't trying to compete with James. She was trying to remain whole. Peace, her closest friend, once asked, "Why do you work so hard when your husband is doing fine?" Georgina smiled faintly. "Because fine can change," she replied. At night, when James slept, she studied, wrote notes, and filed receipts. She felt like she was building a small bridge quietly before the flood arrived. James's new circle was shiny and loud. They met at rooftop lounges, spoke in half-jokes about money, and treated marriage like an accessory. James started attending events alone and returning home smelling like expensive cologne and strangers' laughter. When Georgina asked, "Why didn't you tell me about the dinner?" he replied, "It was last minute." Yet his photos appeared online, glasses raised, smiles wide, women in glamorous dresses leaning too close. Georgina stared at the pictures until her eyes blurred, then closed the app without a word. Soon, he stopped taking pictures with her entirely. At family gatherings, he corrected how she greeted people, how she pronounced words, how she sat. "Sit straight," he whispered once, irritated. Georgina obeyed, humiliation burning under her skin. Peace noticed her silence growing heavier. "Gina, you don't look like you anymore," she said. Georgina forced a small smile. "Maybe I'm just tired," she lied. But inside, she felt like James was slowly pushing her out of the life they built together. Peace didn't have Georgina's patience for pain. One afternoon, she visited and found Georgina staring at the wall, food untouched. "Talk to me," Peace demanded. "James is changing, and you're shrinking." Georgina tried to laugh it off. "He's just under pressure," she said softly. Peace leaned closer, voice low. "Pressure doesn't turn love into embarrassment." Georgina's eyes watered, but she blinked the tears back quickly. "I don't want to fight," she whispered. Peace sighed, holding Georgina's hands. "You don't need to fight. You need to see." Georgina looked away, ashamed of her own hope. She still remembered the man who used to rub her feet after long days, who used to pray with her, who used to call her his blessing. "He'll come back," Georgina insisted, though her voice trembled. Peace shook her head slowly. "Sometimes they don't come back," she said. "Sometimes they only return when they need something." Georgina swallowed hard, feeling that truth land like a stone. The first public shame wasn't loud. It was quiet, cold, and sharp. James told Georgina there was a work dinner and she should stay home because it's not your kind of thing. Georgina nodded, then dressed anyway, not to cause trouble, just to remind herself she still existed. When she arrived, she saw him laughing with colleagues, moving like a man who belonged in the room. Her heart lifted, hopeful, until she walked closer and James' smile collapsed. He looked straight at her, then looked away as if she was a stranger. Georgina stood near the entrance, heat crawling up her neck. A colleague asked James, "Is that your sister?" James hesitated, then said, "Oh, that's Georgina, not my wife. Just her name, stripped of honor." Georgina felt her chest ache. She left quietly, the kind of quiet that screams inside. At home, James returned late and said, annoyed, "Why did you come?" Georgina replied, barely audible, "Because I'm your wife." James didn't answer. He only took off his shoes and walked past her. Karen entered James' ward the way some people enter rooms like they were expected. She was introduced as a brand consultant, always dressed in confidence, always smiling like she knew secrets. At a corporate mixer, She laughed at James' joke, with her hand resting lightly on his arm. "You're funny," she purred. "And you have presence." James, starving for validation, glowed under her attention. She spoke about lifestyle, image, and power, and James listened like she was teaching him how to breathe. When James mentioned his wife once, Karen's expression barely changed. "Oh," she said smoothly, "married men can still be ambitious." That sentence landed in James like permission. He started calling Karen for work advice that stretched late into the night. At home, Georgina noticed the change in his laughter, lighter, younger, not meant for her. One evening, she asked gently, "Who is Karen?" James didn't look up from his phone. "A consultant," he replied. "Don't start." Georgina nodded slowly, heart tightening. The name Karen began to feel like a shadow moving closer. James stopped coming home early. Then he stopped explaining. Then he stopped noticing Georgina's silence. His absence became normal, like a bad smell you eventually stop complaining about. Georgina learned to eat alone, to watch movies alone, to fall asleep with her phone in her hand just in case he called. When he did come home, he would scroll through messages with a small smile, and Georgina would pretend not to see it. She kept telling herself, "Don't accuse without proof." But her heart didn't need proof to feel neglected. To survive her own thoughts, Georgina began journaling. Not dramatic words, just honest ones. Today he didn't ask how my day went. Today I missed him while he was in the same room. Today I felt invisible. One night, she asked quietly, "James, do you still love me?" He sighed as if she was another bill. "Why do you always ask that?" "Of course," he said, eyes on his phone. Georgina stared at him, realizing love shouldn't sound like irritation. She closed her journal and whispered to herself, "I will not beg for basic respect." The loneliness inside the marriage didn't come from being alone. It came from being beside someone who acted like you were a burden. Georgina would sit on the bed while James got dressed for outings he never invited her to. "Where are you going?" she'd ask softly. "Meeting," he'd say, tightening his tie. Sometimes he didn't even lie properly. Georgina would notice the new perfume on his shirt collar, the fresh iron marks, like someone else cared about his appearance. James started calling her too quiet, as if her pain was a personality flaw. "You don't know how to socialize," he said one morning. "You just sit like a village woman." Georgina's hands froze on the cooking pot. The words sliced through her like a blade. "James," she whispered, "that's not fair." He shrugged. "I'm just being honest." Georgina nodded slowly, eyes glossy. Quiet people hear everything, and Georgina heard the truth. James was ashamed of her, and shame, once it settles, rots love from the inside. Peace heard the rumors before Georgina did. In a salon, in a taxi, in a casual office conversation, James and Karen were a thing. At first, Peace wanted to storm into Georgina's house and scream the truth, but she remembered Georgina's heart was already bruised. So she visited carefully, carrying snacks and a gentler tone. "Gina," she began, "I heard something." Georgina's eyes lifted, guarded. "About James?" Peace nodded. "People are talking about him and a woman named Karen." Georgina's chest tightened so suddenly, she had to inhale slowly. She didn't cry immediately. Her tears always came later when she was alone and safe. "Maybe they are lying," she said, voice thin. Peace shook her head. "It's too consistent," she replied. Georgina stared at the floor, thinking of the late nights, the secret smiles, the new password. "I won't disgrace myself with public drama," Georgina murmured. Peace touched her shoulder. "Observing is fine," she said, "but don't let your silence become your prison." Georgina nodded, but inside, something shifted, like a door closing softly. The password change was small, but it felt like betrayal turning into policy. Georgina reached for James's phone one evening when it rang loudly, thinking it might be urgent. The screen flashed, locked. She stared at it, stunned. James snatched it from her hand too quickly. "Don't touch my phone," he snapped. Georgina's mouth opened, then closed. "It was ringing," she explained quietly. James's eyes were sharp. "Stop acting insecure," he said. "You're always looking for something." That night, Georgina lay awake, listening to him type messages beside her. The blue light from his screen painted her cheek like a cold bruise. "Who are you talking to?" she asked softly. James didn't turn. "Work," he said. Georgina swallowed. "Work makes you smile like that." James finally looked at her with annoyance. "Gina, please don't start." The way he said please sounded like a warning, not a request. Georgina turned to the wall, holding her tears in. In her mind, her father's voice returned. "Keep your papers. Keep your proof." She didn't know yet what she would need to prove, but she knew she would need it. One afternoon, a courier delivered a sealed letter to the house. It was addressed to James Kingsley, stamped with urgent markings. Georgina almost left it untouched, but the company logo caught her attention. Legacy Crown Consortium, a name James had mentioned with excitement before, like it was a golden door. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. The corner of the letter was slightly torn, and she could read enough. Final approval, sponsorship, consortium panel. When James came home, Georgina handed it to him calmly. His eyes flicked over it too fast, and he held it like it was oxygen. "This is important," he murmured. Georgina's voice remained gentle. "What is Legacy Crown?" James smiled like a boy with a new toy. "Big people," he said. "If I get their sponsorship, I'm set." Georgina nodded slowly, but something felt off. Why would a panel decide a sponsorship? Why did the letter mention legacy trust conditions? That night, Georgina pulled out her father's old files and stared at a familiar crest stamped on a document. The same crest. Her heartbeat quickened, but she stayed quiet. Adam arrived on a Wednesday morning, wearing a simple suit and an expression that didn't waste words. He asked for Georgina by full name politely. "I'm Adam Okoye," he said, handing her a business card. "Your father's trustee." The word trustee made the room feel suddenly smaller. Georgina's fingers trembled as she accepted the card. "My father?" she asked, voice cautious. Adam nodded. "Kingsley left instructions," he said, "and the time is approaching." Georgina invited him inside. James wasn't home. Peace wasn't there. It felt like the universe wanted this conversation to be private. Adam opened a leather folder, revealing documents that looked older than grief. "Your father planned carefully," Adam said. "He anticipated many things." Georgina swallowed, remembering how James mocked her folders. "What time is approaching?" she asked. Adam met her eyes. "A leadership transition," he replied. "A condition is about to be fulfilled, and when it is, you will legally step into a position your father protected for you." Georgina's mouth went dry. "I'm not a politician," she whispered. Adam's voice was calm. "Not politics," he corrected. "Power. Corporate power." That evening, Georgina sat with Peace in her kitchen, the air heavy with the smell of tea and unsaid words. Peace noticed the way Georgina kept rubbing her thumb against her palm like she was trying to erase worry. "Gina, what's wrong?" she asked. Georgina hesitated, then slowly said, "My father wasn't just a village man." Peace blinked. "What do you mean?" Georgina's eyes shimmered. "He had a legacy," she whispered. "A business structure, a trust. And there's a lawyer, Adam, he says something is about to happen." Peace leaned forward, stunned. "So, all this time?" Georgina nodded faintly. "Daddy kept it quiet," she said. "He always said loud money brings loud enemies." Peace exhaled slowly. "And James doesn't know?" Georgina shook her head. "I didn't tell him," she admitted, voice breaking, "because I wanted him to love me without what I have." Peace's face softened. "And now he's treating you like you're nothing," she murmured, angry on Georgina's behalf. Georgina stared at the table. That's why it hurts, she whispered. He didn't even need to know my power to respect my humanity, Adam returned with a timeline and clarity. He explained that Kingsley's trust had a condition tied to a public corporate event, the Legacy Crown Consortium Gala, where leadership and board decisions would be announced formally. Your father set it this way to protect you, Adam said, pointing to clauses. No one could pressure you privately. It would be official, witnessed, recorded. Georgina listened quietly, absorbing each word like medicine that tasted bitter. So, I become CEO that night? She asked softly. Adam nodded. If the board confirms what they've already prepared, yes, he replied. Georgina's breath shook. Why would my father do this? Adam's voice gentled. Because he knew the world, he said. He knew people respect women's power only when it is legally undeniable. Georgina looked down at the documents, feeling the weight of her father's love. He always told me to keep papers, she whispered. Adam gave a small, sad smile. He wasn't being dramatic, he said. He was giving you armor. Georgina swallowed her tears. Somewhere in her chest, fear and strength began to stand side by side. James' desperation grew as the gala approached. He talked about Legacy Crown like it was a god that could bless him. If we get this sponsorship, we'll expand, he told Georgina, pacing the living room. Do you know what this means? My boss said this could change my career. Georgina watched him, silent, feeling the strange twist of fate tightening. James had no idea. His dream was tied to her father's legacy, and soon to her. I need everything to be perfect, James added. No scandals, no mistakes. Georgina nodded slowly. So, integrity matters now? She asked gently. James paused, then frowned. Don't start your attitude, he said. Georgina lowered her eyes. I'm not starting anything, she replied. James continued pacing, then said, almost to himself, I'll do anything to secure it. The words chilled Georgina. She thought of Karen, how she hovered around James like perfume. She thought of how James had erased her in public. No scandals, he said, yet he was becoming one. Georgina's heart hurt, not because she wanted revenge, but because she wished he would change before consequences arrived. But consequences were already on their way. Karen stopped being subtle. She called James at odd hours, not caring if Georgina heard. Sometimes her voice floated through the phone speaker like sugar-coated disrespect. James, where are you? She'd ask playfully. James would step aside, lowering his voice. Georgina would pretend not to notice, even though her chest burned. One evening, Karen showed up at James' office and posted a photo online, her hand on his shoulder. He smiled too familiar. The caption read, Big moves with big people. James began enjoying the attention. He started dressing better, walking with more arrogance, speaking about Georgina as if she was simple. Karen fed him a dangerous idea that he deserved a more glamorous life. You need a woman who matches your level, she told him once, her lips close to his ear. James didn't correct her. He didn't defend his marriage. He let the poison feel like praise. At home, Georgina asked softly, Are you happy? James scoffed. Of course, he said. Why? Georgina looked at him, eyes tired. Because you look like you're running, she whispered. James snapped. From what? Stop being dramatic. But Georgina wasn't being dramatic. She was watching her husband become a stranger in slow motion. The day of the gala approached like thunder you could feel in your bones. Georgina prepared quietly, not out of vanity but out of dignity. She chose a simple, elegant dress, no loud labels, no desperate sparkle. She wanted her presence to speak without begging for attention. Peace helped her press the fabric and fix her hair. You look like calm power, Peace said, eyes shining. Georgina smiled faintly. I feel like a girl walking into a storm, she admitted. As she dressed, Georgina remembered her father's hands, the way he held her face, and said, Keep your papers. She opened a small box and took out a bracelet her father had given her, plain gold, engraved with her initials. She clasped it on slowly, breathing in courage. Then she looked at herself in the mirror, eyes searching her own reflection. I won't embarrass anyone, she whispered. I will only exist. Peace hugged her gently. That's enough, Peace replied. Your existence is what they've been trying to erase. Georgina closed her eyes for a moment, gathering herself like someone gathering broken pieces, then stepped forward. James sent the message an hour before the gala. Please don't embarrass me. Just stay home. Georgina stared at the screen until the words blurred. She didn't feel anger first, she felt grief. The kind of grief you feel when you realize someone you loved has become someone who can hurt you without shaking. Peace watched her face change and asked, What did he say? Georgina handed her the phone silently. Peace's mouth opened in disbelief. He said this to his wife, she whispered, furious. Georgina took a deep breath and replied with nothing. No argument, no pleading. She placed her phone down and continued getting ready. Peace blinked. You're still going? Georgina nodded. Yes, she said softly. Not to fight, not to disgrace him, but I won't hide because he's ashamed. Peace squeezed her hand. He doesn't deserve your calm, Peace muttered. Georgina's eyes shimmered. My calm isn't for him, she whispered. It's for me. She picked up her clutch, straightened her shoulders, and walked out as if her heart wasn't trembling inside her chest. The venue glowed with expensive light cameras, red carpets, music that felt too cheerful for Georgina's mood. James arrived first with Karen, his hand placed possessively on her waist like he wanted the world to misunderstand on purpose. Karen wore a dress that demanded attention, and she smiled like she had already won. This is our night, Karen murmured. James laughed, looking around for approving eyes. Just stay close, he replied. People are watching. Karen leaned in. Good, she said. Let them. Georgina arrived alone, blending into the crowd like a quiet wave. For a moment, no one noticed her, and she felt relief. Then she saw James across the room, laughing, shining, performing happiness with Karen at his side. Georgina's stomach tightened, but she kept walking, controlled. She didn't want to collapse in public. She didn't want to beg for recognition. She only wanted to breathe without feeling ashamed of her own face. Peace texted her, I'm here if you need me. Georgina typed back, just pray for me. She stood near the edge of the crowd, quiet, as if her life wasn't about to change forever. James spotted Georgina eventually, and his expression hardened. He didn't come to greet her. He didn't wave. He acted like she was an inconvenience that had slipped past security. A colleague approached him and nodded toward Georgina. Is that your wife? The man asked. James's jaw tightened. Yes, he replied quickly, then forced a laugh and pulled Karen closer. But let me introduce you to someone important, Karen. The emphasis on important stabbed Georgina from across the room. Karen turned slowly and looked Georgina up and down with a smile that wasn't friendly. It was triumphant. When James wasn't looking, Karen raised her glass slightly toward Georgina, a silent insult disguised as politeness. Georgina lowered her gaze, not because she feared Karen, but because she feared what her own pain might do if she let it speak. She remembered her father's words, power will make them fear you. But tonight, Georgina didn't feel powerful. She felt like a woman watching her marriage be mocked in public. Still, she held herself steady because she didn't come to beg. She came to stand. The program began with speeches and applause. James leaned toward Karen, whispering jokes into her ear. Karen giggled loudly, enjoying the attention. Then the MC announced a major highlight, the unveiling of the new leadership of Legacy Crown Consortium. People murmured with interest, chairs shifting as important guests prepared to stand. James scoffed, smirking at Karen. CEO, he whispered, must be one old man's son. Karen laughed. Of course, she replied, lips curled. These people always inherit everything. Georgina heard them. The laugh didn't just insult a stranger, it insulted her father's memory. It insulted the quiet man who had loved her enough to prepare her future in silence. Georgina's fingers tightened around her clutch until her knuckles paled. For a second, she wanted to cry right there. Not because she was weak, but because grief is a living thing, it rises when disrespected. Her father's face flashed in her mind. Tired eyes, firm voice, protective love. Georgina inhaled slowly, steadying herself. "Daddy," she whispered under her breath. "I'm here." The pain didn't leave, but it sharpened into something stronger. Resolve. The lights dimmed. The room stood like a wave rising all at once. Music softened into a respectful hush. The MC smiled broadly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "please welcome the incoming Chief Executive Officer of Legacy Crown Consortium." Cameras lifted. Phones rose. Georgina felt time slow down, as if the air thickened around her body. She stood too, calm on the outside, trembling on the inside. The MC's voice rang out clearly. "Georgina Kingsley." For a heartbeat, James didn't react. Then his face drained of color so quickly, it looked like someone pulled the life out of him. Karen's smile collapsed, her lips parting in confusion. "What did he say?" Karen whispered. James didn't answer. He stared, wide-eyed, as Georgina stepped forward. The room erupted in applause. People turned toward her with sudden respect, like her presence had always been known, just not by James. Georgina walked toward the stage with measured steps, her heels clicking softly, each sound like a closing door. James tried to move, but bodies and protocol blocked him. In that moment, he wasn't special. He was just a man who had misjudged his own wife. Georgina reached the stage and paused, letting the applause settle. She looked out at the crowd, face composed, eyes bright with restrained emotion. This wasn't a victory dance, it was a responsibility. She took the microphone, voice calm. "Good evening," she began. "Thank you for honoring Legacy Crown tonight." Her words were steady, but inside, she felt her father's presence like a hand on her shoulder. Adam stood nearby, expression proud but controlled. Peace watched from the crowd, tears shining. James pushed forward, desperate, but security stepped in front of him gently. "Sir, please remain in your area," one guard said politely. James's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He had never been blocked like that in his life. It humbled him publicly without a single insult. Karen stood frozen, suddenly unsure where to place her hands. Georgina continued, speaking about leadership, legacy, and standards. She didn't mention James. She didn't shame him by name. Yet every word felt like it was aimed at the kind of man James had become. Someone who thought power was for showing off, not for doing right. Georgina's tone shifted gently, and the room leaned in. "Legacy Crown has always been built on integrity," she said. "We invest in companies that reflect stability, respect, and ethical conduct." She paused, letting the words sink. "Effective immediately. We are strengthening our ethics review process." The room murmured. James's heart thudded. Karen's eyes darted around, searching for safety. Georgina continued, voice still calm. "Any company linked to public misconduct, reputational risk, or internal ethics violations will be removed from consideration." Then she opened a slim folder. "As part of our first action under this standard," she said, "Legacy Crown is withdrawing from negotiations with Bridgefront Solutions, James' company." The name landed like a slap. James swayed slightly as if the ground moved. His boss, seated nearby, turned sharply toward him with narrowed eyes. Georgina didn't look at James. She didn't need to. She simply added, "We believe partnership should honor both corporate excellence and human dignity." Cameras flashed. Whispers spread like wildfire. James realized, in real time, that his private cruelty had grown teeth. He had wanted status so badly, that he forgot reputation is also character. And now, his career was bleeding in public. After the program, James fought through the crowd like a drowning man reaching for air. He found Georgina in a quieter hallway near a VIP lounge where Adam and a few board members stood. "Georgina!" James called, voice cracking. Georgina turned slowly, her eyes calm but exhausted. James stepped closer, hands shaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded, desperate. "You're my wife. Why would you hide this from me?" Georgina's gaze didn't flinch. "I didn't hide," she replied softly. "I protected." James swallowed hard. "Protected from me?" he asked, offended and afraid. Georgina nodded once, a small movement that carried years of pain. "A husband is not a title," she said, voice steady. "It's behavior." James's eyes filled with tears, anger mixing with shame. "I was under pressure," he whispered. Georgina's lips trembled slightly, but she didn't break. "Pressure reveals," she said quietly. "It doesn't create." James tried to reach for her hand. Georgina stepped back. Not dramatic, just final. The distance between them felt like a verdict. Adam stepped forward with professional calm. "Mr. Kingsley," he said, holding out a sealed envelope. James stared at it as if it could bite. "What is that?" he asked, voice hoarse. Adam's tone remained respectful. "Legal notice," he replied, "and marriage settlement terms, as instructed by the trust." James's hands shook as he opened it. The words blurred at first: clauses, dates, conditions. Then he saw the part that crushed him, a record of funding tied to a project that launched his early career. Funding that came from Kingsley's trust. James looked up slowly, face pale. "Your father?" he whispered at Georgina. Georgina's eyes glistened. "He helped you," she said softly, quietly, "because he believed in our marriage." James' throat tightened. "So my ladder," he began. Georgina finished the sentence calmly. "Was held by hands you mocked." James looked away, breathing hard. Karen appeared at the end of the hallway, watching, uncertain. Georgina glanced at her briefly and said something that cut clean. "You're not my enemy. You're just the proof." Karen's face tightened with shame. James realized the deepest humiliation wasn't losing money. It was discovering he had been ungrateful to the very foundation that carried him. James tried everything after that: tears, apologies, promises, even anger. "I can change," he pleaded, voice breaking. "I swear, Georgina, I didn't know. I didn't understand." Georgina listened, eyes wet, but her calm didn't soften into surrender. "I loved you when we had nothing," she whispered. "I loved you when you were hungry, when your shoes were torn, when your dreams were louder than your pockets." James sobbed, reaching for her again. "Then why can't you forgive me?" he begged. Georgina's voice cracked, not with rage, but with grief. "Because the version of you I loved is dead," she said quietly. "And I've already mourned him alone while you were busy performing happiness for strangers." James fell silent, stunned. Georgina inhaled shakily, then straightened. "I'm not walking away angry," she added. "I'm walking away free." She turned and left with Adam, dignity wrapped around her like armor. In the distance, Peace waited, eyes shining, arms open. James stood there in the hallway with his ruined image and his exposed heart, realizing too late that the wife he tried to hide was the very woman the world stood up for. We've come to the end of the story. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Leave a like, share, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on post notification. Thank you so much for watching.